The 11-year-old girl's fist connected with the farmer's jaw before anyone saw it coming. "Touch my brother again," Maggie Walsh snarled, blood on her knuckles, "and I'll take your eyes." 10 children stood shoulder to shoulder on the auction platform. Snow fell on their threadbare coats. The youngest was crying. The oldest was ready to kill. Nobody in that Wyoming crowd wanted them. Too many, too broken, too much trouble. Then boots crunched through frozen mud. Heavy, deliberate, coming closer. Before we continue this journey, I invite you to subscribe and stay until the very end. If this story touches your heart, comment with your city so I can see how far it travels. $20 for the lot. Take 'em or leave 'em. The farmer wiped blood from his split lip, glaring at Maggie with murder in his eyes. His voice carried across the crowd like a death sentence. "That's $2 a head. More than they're worth, if you ask me." Maggie stepped back, positioning herself between the man and her siblings. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her hands stayed steady. Behind her, she could feel Hank trembling. Lucy had gone silent, the dangerous kind of silent that meant she was about to bolt. Reverend Ezra Blackwood stepped forward, his black coat pristine against the falling snow. His smile made Maggie's skin crawl. Now, Mr. Hendricks. Let's not be hasty. These children have value. They just need proper guidance." Guidance. Maggie knew what that word meant. She'd seen the scars on children who'd received the Reverend's guidance. The crowd pressed closer. 40, maybe 50 people, their breath steaming in the December air. Farmers looking for cheap labor. Women who needed kitchen help. Men whose eyes lingered too long on the older girls. Maggie counted 10 heads behind her. 10 children who'd survived the orphan train from New York. 10 children who'd watched families get torn apart at every stop between here and the Atlantic. She'd promised them. She'd promised they'd stay together. "I'll take the redhead and her brother." A woman in a worn blue dress pushed through the crowd. Strong arms on that girl. Good for washing. "We ain't separating," Maggie said. "All of us or none of us." The woman laughed. "All 10. Honey, nobody's taking 10 children. You ain't worth the food it'd cost to feed you. Then nobody's taking any of us." Reverend Blackwood's smile tightened. He moved closer, lowering his voice so only Maggie could hear. "You're making this difficult, child. I've been patient. I've given you opportunities at every station. But my patience has limits. So does mine." His hand clamped around her wrist, squeezing until bone ground against bone. Maggie didn't flinch. "You will behave," he hissed, "or I will personally ensure your siblings are placed so far apart they'll never find each other. Do you understand me?" Maggie understood. She'd understood men like Blackwood her whole life. They used God's name like a weapon and broke children like kindling. "Yes, Reverend," she said sweetly. "I understand perfectly." Then she drove her knee into his groin. Blackwood doubled over with a strangled grunt. The crowd gasped. Someone laughed. Maggie grabbed Hank's hand and pulled him close. "Run," she whispered. "When I say we all run, pass it back." But the message never made it down the line. A man appeared at the edge of the platform. Tall, broad-shouldered, maybe 45, maybe older, hard to tell with the snow in his dark hair and the shadows carved into his face. He wore a rancher's coat, well made but worn, and he studied the scene with eyes the color of winter sky. He didn't speak. He just watched. Blackwood straightened his face purple with rage. He raised his hand to strike. The stranger moved. One moment he was at the platform's edge. The next his hand was locked around Blackwood's wrist, stopping the blow mid-swing. That's enough. 2 words. Quiet. Final. The kind of voice that made grown men reconsider their choices. "Mr. Thornton." Blackwood's tone shifted instantly, oil replacing venom. "I didn't see you there. This child attacked me. I was simply about to hit an 11-year-old girl in front of 50 witnesses." The stranger, Thornton, released Blackwood's wrist. That what you were simply doing? Reverend? She assaulted me. Drew blood on Mr. Hendricks. These orphans are dangerous, undisciplined. They're children. Thornton's gaze moved across the platform, studying each small face. Maggie felt those winter eyes pause on her, measuring, calculating. 10 of them by my count. Yes, and as I've explained to the crowd, they're not actually siblings. Just strays who traveled on the same train. There's no reason they need to remain. How much? The question dropped like a stone into still water. I beg your pardon? Blackwood blinked. How much for all 10? Name your price. The crowd went dead silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Maggie stared at the stranger. This was wrong. This was a trick. Rich men didn't buy orphans out of kindness. They bought them for labor, for show, for worse things she'd heard whispered about in dormitory darkness. Mr. Thornton, surely you're joking. Blackwood forced a laugh that fooled no one. You taking in children, 10 of them. You live alone on that ranch with no wife, no. How? Much. The Reverend's expression shifted. Maggie watched greed wrestle with outrage and win. Well, he smoothed his coat, calculating. There are fees, of course. Transportation costs from New York. Documentation. Medical examinations. The standard placement fee is $10 per child, but given the circumstances. He paused, licking his lips. $500 for the lot. Someone in the crowd gasped. $500 was a fortune, more than most families earned in 2 years. Thornton reached into his coat, pulled out a leather wallet, counted bills with steady hands. Maggie's heart stopped. $500. He pressed the money into Blackwood's palm. Plus another $50 for your trouble, and for any paperwork that might cause problems to disappear. Blackwood's fingers curled around the bills like claws. A pleasure doing business, Mr. Thornton. It's not business. Thornton turned to Maggie. His eyes met hers, and she saw something there she didn't expect. Not hunger, not calculation. Something closer to recognition. It's family. He extended his hand. Palm up, an offering. Maggie didn't move. What do you want? She demanded. To take you somewhere warm. Why? Because it's cold. Because you're shivering. Because your littlest one is about to collapse. Maggie glanced back. Lucy was swaying on her feet, her lips blue, her eyes glassy with exhaustion. Tommy, the youngest boy, barely 5, clutched his ragged blanket with fingers that had stopped shaking, which was worse. That's not an answer, Maggie said. No, it's not. Thornton's voice softened. But it's all I've got right now. Come with me, and I'll explain on the way. Stay here, and let the Reverend find you 10 separate homes by nightfall. Your choice. My choice. Maggie almost laughed. When had anything ever been her choice? She'd been making decisions since she was 8 years old, since Da died in the mine, and Ma worked herself to death trying to keep them fed. Every choice had been survival. Every decision had been between bad and worse. But this man, this stranger with winter eyes and steady hands? Maggie. The voice came from behind her, soft, certain. She turned. Joe Carter stood at the back of the group, his dark face unreadable. 9 years old, mixed race in a world that wanted him erased, and he'd survived longer on his own than any of them. If anyone could smell a trap, it was Joe. He gave her a single nod. Maggie turned back to Thornton. She looked at his outstretched hand. Calloused, scarred, the hand of a man who worked for what he had. She took it. His grip was firm but gentle, warm despite the cold. Smart girl. He helped her down from the platform. Let's get you all out of this snow. What? The wagon was covered, thank God. Canvas stretched over wooden hoops, blocking the worst of the wind. Thornton lifted the little ones first. Tommy, Lucy, then the Murphy twins, Patrick and Rose, who hadn't spoken since their mother jumped off the train 3 states back. Maggie counted heads as they climbed in. 10 children, all accounted for. Hank pressed against her side as they settled onto benches lined with wool blankets. Real blankets. Thick ones that smelled like cedar instead of mold. "Where are we going?" Hank whispered. "Somewhere called the Thornton Ranch." Maggie kept her voice low. 20 miles north. "Is he going to hurt us?" Maggie looked at the front of the wagon where Thornton was checking the horses' harnesses. She thought about the way he'd stopped Blackwood's hand, the way he'd counted out $500 without blinking, the way he'd said family like it was the most natural word in the world. "I don't know yet," she admitted. "But we're together. That's what matters." Thornton climbed onto the driver's seat, took up the reins. Before they started moving, he turned and looked into the wagon bed. Everyone accounted for 10. Maggie's voice was flat. "Same as when you bought us." If the word stung, he didn't show it. He just nodded once and turned back to the road. The horses lurched forward into the storm. They'd been traveling for maybe an hour when Thornton spoke again. The dark-haired boy in the back. The one who won't look at anyone. "What's his story?" Maggie glanced at Joe, who sat apart from the others, watching the white landscape through a gap in the canvas. His eyes tracked every tree, every rock, every potential escape route. "That's Joe. He doesn't have a story. Or he does, but he won't tell it." "Fair enough." Silence stretched between them. Maggie pulled one of the blankets tighter around her shoulders. Even with the canvas cover, the cold seeped in. "Here." Thornton shrugged off his leather coat and passed it back to her. Heavy, warm, smelling of leather and horses and tobacco. "I can't take your coat. You'll freeze. I've survived worse." He didn't look at her. "Put it on. You're no good to your siblings if you're dead." Maggie wanted to argue, wanted to throw the coat back in his face and tell him she didn't need his charity. But her fingers were numb, and Lucy had started coughing, and the coat was so warm. She put it on. "Can I ask you something?" she said after another long silence. "You seem to ask a lot of questions. Is that a problem?" "No. Means you're thinking. I'd rather have that than blind obedience." Maggie filed that away. "At the auction when Blackwood was about to hit me. You stopped him." "I did." Why Thornton was quiet. The horses plodded on their breath, steaming in the frigid air. 25 years ago, he said finally. "I had a brother, William. He was 14. Maggie waited. "There was a battle. Gettysburg. We were both soldiers too young, but the war didn't care about age." Thornton's jaw tightened. "We got separated during the retreat. I could hear him calling for me, but the smoke was thick and I couldn't find him. What happened, I didn't save him." The words were steady, but something in his eyes broke through the stone. "By the time I found his body, he'd been dead for hours. 10 feet from a field hospital I didn't know was there. I'm sorry, don't be." Thornton's voice hardened. "It was 25 years ago. But I made a choice after that. Every time I see someone about to get hurt, someone I can help, I help. Doesn't matter who they are or what they've done, because nobody helped William. So, we're your redemption. Maybe. Or maybe you're just 10 kids who needed a home, and I'm just a man with too much house and not enough people in it." He glanced back at her. Does the reason matter if the result is the same? Maggie thought about that. About all the reasons people had given for taking orphans' free labor tax benefits, Christian charity. None of those reasons had made the placements better or worse. What mattered was what happened after. I suppose not. They rode on in silence. Maggie. The voice was small. Hank crawling up from the wagon bed to wedge himself between her and the front bench. "What is it? Is this man going to keep us?" Maggie looked at Thornton. He looked back, waiting for her answer. "I don't know yet. He has sad eyes." Hank studied Thornton with the uncomfortable directness of children, like Da did after the mine hurt him, before he died. Something crossed Thornton's face. Recognition, maybe. Or old pain stirring awake. Your da worked in a mine. Hank nodded. Coal mine in Pennsylvania. The ceiling fell on him. He couldn't breathe right after that. Then he died. Hank. Maggie pulled her brother close. You don't have to. I want to. Hank's voice was small, but determined. Because if he knows about Da, maybe he'll understand why I'm scared of loud noises, and why Maggie gets angry when people grab us, and why Lucy can't sleep without someone holding her hand. Thornton was quiet for a long moment. Hank, he said finally, I'm not going to pretend I understand everything you've been through, but I know what it's like to lose family. I know what it's like to carry that loss around like a stone in your chest. And I know that sometimes the only thing that helps is finding new people to help you carry it. Are you going to be one of those people I'm going to try? Hank considered this with 8-year-old solemnity. Then he nodded, once crawled back to the wagon bed, and curled up next to Lucy. Maggie watched him go. He's braver than me, she murmured. No. Thornton kept his eyes on the road. He just has you to be brave for him. That's different. The first sign of the ranch appeared through the swirling snow, a massive wooden arch with Thornton burned into the timber. That's us, Thornton said. Welcome home. Home. The word stuck in Maggie's throat. What emerged from the storm was bigger than anything she'd imagined. A 2-story house of timber and stone windows glowing against the gray afternoon smoke rising from 3 chimneys. Barns and stables stretching into the white distance. You own all this, she breathed. 8,000 acres, give or take. One man can't own that much. One man can own whatever he can hold on to. Thornton guided the horses toward the house. My father started with 300 acres and a mule. I turned it into this. He paused. And now I've got no one to leave it to. Before Maggie could respond, the front door burst open. A woman in her 60s strode onto the porch, wrapped in a thick shawl, her face tight with worry. Eli. Thornton. Where in God's name have you been? The storm's getting worse by the minute, and Dan's been worried sick about the cattle and... She stopped dead. Are those children? They are. Thornton jumped down from the wagon. Mrs. Hensley, meet Maggie Hank. Joe, Lucy, Patrick, Rose, Tommy, Grace. Samuel and Benjamin. They're staying with us. Staying with... The woman's mouth opened and closed. Eli, you can't just... There are procedures. Procedures are done. Right now they need warmth, food, and beds. Thornton was already lifting Tommy from the wagon bed. Everything else can wait until morning. Mrs. Hensley stared at the children. Really looked at them. Their thin faces. Their threadbare clothes. Tommy's clutched blanket. Lucy's vacant eyes. Joe standing apart and watching everything like he was planning an escape. Something in her expression shifted. Well, she said briskly, don't just stand there in the cold. Inside all of you. I'll put on soup. The warmth hit Maggie like a physical force. Real warmth. The kind that seeped into bones that had forgotten what it meant to be warm. She stood in the entrance hall, dripping snowmelt onto floors that probably cost more than her father had made in a year, and tried to breathe. Don't touch nothing, she hissed at Tommy, who was reaching for a porcelain vase. Everything can be touched. Thornton had appeared beside them, silent as a shadow. Everything can be broken. Things get replaced. He looked at her directly. Children don't. Maggie didn't know how to respond to that. Mrs. Hensley swept through like a force of nature, gathering children and issuing orders. Hot baths, clean clothes, soup in the kitchen. Move, move, move. The next 2 hours blurred together. Water so warm it stung. Night clothes that smelled like lavender instead of lice. Soup thick with vegetables and actual meat served in a kitchen bigger than the entire dormitory Maggie had shared with 30 other girls in New York. Tommy fell asleep at the table, his face nearly in his bowl. Lucy ate mechanically, not tasting anything. Patrick and Rose sat pressed together, eating with one hand, holding hands with the other. The younger children, Grace, Samuel Benjamin shoveled food like it might disappear. Joe ate nothing, just watched. And Maggie. Maggie watched Thornton. He sat at the head of the table, nursing coffee, saying little. But his eyes moved constantly, checking each child, noting who needed more food, who was struggling, who was scared. "You're staring." He said it without looking at her. "You're confusing. How so? You bought 10 orphans, brought us to your fancy ranch, and now you're just sitting there drinking coffee like it's normal. Nothing about today has been normal." His voice was quiet. "But I figure we've all had enough drama for one day. Sometimes the best thing you can do is just be quiet and let people breathe." Maggie considered this. "I don't trust you," she said. "I know. I'm going to watch you every second. If you do anything to hurt my family, I'll make you regret it." Thornton nodded slowly. "Fair enough. You're not scared of an 11-year-old girl threatening you. I'm terrified." He didn't smile, but something shifted in his eyes. "Because I think you mean it. And I think if I give you cause, you'll find a way to make good on that threat." "I would." "Then I'd better not give you cause." He stood draining his coffee. "Mrs. Hensley will show you to your rooms. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we'll figure out the rest." He walked out without another word. Maggie watched him go. This strange man who'd upended her entire world with a handful of money and a single word. Family. She still didn't trust him, but for the first time in 3 years, she wanted to. The bedroom was bigger than any room Maggie had ever slept in. Real beds, 4 of them, with thick mattresses and quilts that smelled like cedar. A window overlooking snow-covered land. A dresser with an actual mirror. The girls had been put together, Maggie, Lucy, Rose, and Grace. The boys were in the next room. Maggie had checked on them 3 times already. "You're not sleeping." Joe's voice soft in the darkness. He stood in the doorway, a shadow among shadows. "Neither are you." Maggie sat up. "What do you want? To leave?" Maggie's blood ran cold. "Joe." He held up a hand. "I ain't running. Not tonight. But I need you to know if this goes bad, I'm gone. I don't care about promises or family or any of that. I've survived on my own before. I'll do it again. This might not go bad. It always goes bad." Joe's voice was flat. "People like us don't get happy endings, Maggie. We get used up and thrown away. That's how it works. Maybe it doesn't have to be." Joe was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "You believe that Maggie thought about the question. About Thornton stopping Blackwood's hand. About $500 counted out without hesitation. About a man saying family like it was the most natural word in the world." "I don't know," she admitted. "But I'm willing to find out." Joe studied her in the darkness. Then slowly he nodded. "I'll give it a week. If nothing bad happens by then, maybe I'll start believing too." He disappeared back into the shadows. Maggie lay back down, staring at the ceiling. Somewhere below, she could hear voices Thornton and Mrs. Hensley talking softly. "You've lost your mind, Eli." "Probably. 10 children. 10. What are you going to do with 10 children? Raise them. If they'll let me." "You don't know the first thing about raising children. Then I'll learn." A pause. "This is about William, isn't it? You think you can make up for what happened by saving these strays?" "Maybe I do. Is that so wrong?" "It's not wrong. It's just, these children are broken, Eli. They've been hurt in ways we can't imagine. You can't fix that with money and good intentions. I'm not trying to fix them." Thornton's voice dropped. "I'm trying to give them space to fix themselves. And maybe in the process, they'll help me fix what's broken in me too." Silence. "You're a fool, Eli Thornton. Never claimed otherwise." Maggie blinked back something that might have been tears. She didn't cry. Hadn't cried since Da died. Crying was wasted effort. But something had shifted in her chest. Something she didn't quite understand. This man, This cold, quiet, broken man had looked at 10 unwanted children and seen something worth saving. It didn't mean she trusted him. Trust was earned. But for the first time in 3 years, Maggie Walsh allowed herself to imagine a future that didn't end in disappointment. It was terrifying. It was also, she realized as she finally closed her eyes, the first step towards something that might someday feel like home. The first crack came 3 days later. Maggie had been waiting for it. Good things didn't last. She knew that better than anyone. So when the screaming started at 2 in the morning, she was almost relieved. Finally, the other shoe dropping. She was out of bed before her mind fully woke, racing down the hall toward the boys' room. Tommy's wails echoed through the house. Raw, terrified, the kind of screaming that came from somewhere deeper than nightmares. Fire, fire. Mama, there's fire! Maggie burst through the door. Tommy was thrashing in his bed, tangled in blankets, eyes wide open, but seeing nothing. Hank crouched in the corner, hands over his ears, rocking back and forth. The younger boys, Samuel and Benjamin, were crying. Patrick sat frozen, staring at nothing. Maggie grabbed his shoulders. Tommy, wake up. There's no fire. You're safe. It's burning. Everything's burning. I can smell it. There's no fire. She pulled him against her chest, held him tight. I've got you. You're at the ranch, remember? Mr. Thornton's ranch. We're safe. Footsteps thundered in the hallway. Thornton appeared in the doorway, hair disheveled, shirt half-buttoned. Behind him, Mrs. Hensley clutched a candle. What happened, Night Terror? Maggie didn't look up. He gets them sometimes. About the fire that killed his ma. Tommy was still sobbing, but the screaming had stopped. His small body shook against her chest. I want Mama, he whimpered. I want to go home. I know, baby. I know. Thornton stepped into the room. He moved slowly, carefully, like approaching a spooked horse. He knelt beside Maggie and Tommy, close enough to help, but not close enough to crowd. Hey, little man. His voice was gentler than Maggie had ever heard it. Rough night, huh? Tommy peeked out from Maggie's arms. His face was wet with tears and snot, his eyes red and swollen. I saw the fire. It was eating everything. I know. Fires are scary. Thornton reached out, hesitated, then gently touched Tommy's shoulder. But you know what's good about fires? Tommy shook his head. They go out. Every fire, no matter how big, eventually goes out. And then you rebuild. That's what people do. We rebuild. But Mama didn't rebuild. She went away. Maggie's heart cracked clean in half. Thornton was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thick. You're right. Some people can't rebuild, and that's the hardest thing in the world to understand. He moved closer, giving Tommy time to pull away if he wanted. But you know what your mama would want? What she'd want you to rebuild for her. She'd want you to grow up and be happy and live a good life. That's what mamas want for their babies. Tommy's lip trembled. How do you know? Because that's what my mama wanted for me. And my brother William, the one who died in the war, that's what she wanted for him too. Thornton's voice caught. She told me after he was gone that the best way to honor him was to live well. To not let the fire or the snow or whatever took them win. Tommy considered this with the intense concentration of a 5-year-old processing impossible things. So, if I'm happy, Mama wins. That's right. Mama wins. Something shifted in Tommy's face. Not happiness. He was too young and too broken for that. But something like understanding. Okay, he said softly. I'll try. That's all anyone can ask. Thornton stood, his joints cracking. Think you can go back to sleep? Tommy looked at Maggie, then at the other boys still huddled in fear. Can we all sleep together? In the big room, Maggie glanced at Thornton. Take my room, he said. Bed's bigger, fits more. We can't take your You're not taking it. I'm giving it. He was already moving toward the door. I've got paperwork anyway. Wasn't sleeping much. He left before Maggie could argue. Mrs. Hensley appeared with an armload of quilts, her expression soft. Come on, children, let's get you settled. They trooped down the hall to Thornton's room, all 10 of them, because the girls had appeared at some point, drawn by the commotion. The bed was massive, big enough to hold them all with room to spare. Tommy curled up in the middle, clutching his blanket. Lucy pressed against his side. The Murphy twins wrapped around each other. The younger ones found their places like puzzle pieces fitting together. Maggie lay at the edge watching the ceiling. Maggie Joe's voice barely a whisper. He'd positioned himself between the bed and the door, his back against the wall. Yeah, he didn't have to do that. Get up. Talk to Tommy. I know. Why did he? Maggie thought about the question, about the way Thornton had knelt in the darkness, talked about fires going out, and Mama's winning. I don't know yet. Joe was quiet for a long moment. My pa used to talk to me like that, before they killed him. Maggie turned her head. Joe never talked about his past, ever. What happened? Men came in the night, white hoods. Said my pa didn't know his place. Joe's voice was flat, emotionless. My ma grabbed me and ran. We ran for 2 years before she died. Joe, I don't want your pity. I'm just saying I remember what it felt like, having someone talk to you like you mattered. Joe paused. That man talks to Tommy like Tommy matters. Maybe Tommy does matter. To him. Nobody matters to anybody. Not really. Maggie reached out, found Joe's hand in the darkness. You matter to me. Joe didn't pull away. He didn't say anything either, but his fingers tightened around hers just for a moment before letting go. Get some sleep, he said. Tomorrow's coming whether we're ready or not. Morning came gray and cold. Maggie woke to find Tommy still curled against her thumb in his mouth, a habit he'd broken months ago. The others were still sleeping, their breathing soft and even. She slipped out of bed carefully and padded downstairs. Thornton was in the kitchen, standing at the stove. The smell of bacon and coffee filled the air. You cook. Maggie couldn't hide her surprise. When I have to. He didn't turn around. Mrs. Hensley doesn't come in till 8. Been making my own breakfast for 15 years. Maggie hovered in the doorway. Thank you. For what you did with Tommy. Didn't do anything special. You did. The words came hard. Nobody's ever talked to him like that. Like his feelings mattered. Like his mama mattered. Thornton was quiet. Then he turned, spatula in hand. Every person's feelings matter, Maggie. Even little ones. Especially little ones. He turned back to the stove. You hungry? I could eat. Then sit down. Maggie sat at the big wooden table watching him work. He moved efficiently, comfortably, a man who'd spent years in his own company. Can I ask you something? You're going to anyway. Last night, when you talked about your mama wanting you to live well, did she really say that? Thornton's hands stilled for just a moment. She did. Right before she died. Consumption took her about 3 years after William. He cracked eggs into the pan. She held my hand and told me I'd spent too long grieving my brother. That William would want me to be happy. That she wanted me to be happy. Were you happy? No. He plated the eggs, brought 2 servings to the table, sat down across from her. Not for a long time. I built this ranch because I didn't know what else to do. Threw myself into work because it was easier than feeling. Pushed everyone away because losing people hurt too much. What changed? Nothing. He picked up his fork. Nothing changed. I just got tired of being miserable. And then you 10 showed up and I thought what? Maybe it wasn't too late. To try again. To have something worth living for besides cattle and land. Maggie absorbed this. That's a lot of pressure to put on 10 orphans. You're right. It is. And I'm sorry for that. You didn't ask to be anybody's salvation. We need more than salvation. The words surprised her. She hadn't meant to say them. I know. Thornton set down his fork. You need someone who's going to show up every day. Not just when it's convenient or when there's a crisis. Someone who's going to learn your names and your fears and your dreams. Someone who's going to mess up and apologize and try again. Can you be that person I don't know? His honesty was brutal. I've never been that person for anyone. But I'm going to try. That's all I can promise. Maggie picked up her fork. Took a bite of eggs. They were good. Better than anything she'd had since before Da died. Okay, I'll give you a chance. Not trust, not yet. But a chance. She pointed her fork at him. But if you hurt any of them, I'll make you regret it. You said that before. I meant it then. I mean it now. Something flickered across Thornton's face. Almost a smile. Understood. The others trickled down one by one. Lucy first, then Hank, leading a still sleepy Tommy. The Murphy twins came together as always. The younger children followed Grace, rubbing her eyes, Samuel and Benjamin shoving each other. Joe came last, watching everything with those careful eyes. Thornton made more eggs, more bacon. Mrs. Hensley arrived and immediately took over, fussing about nutrition and growing children. It was Maggie realized almost like a family. The thought terrified her, but not as much as it had yesterday. After breakfast, Thornton announced he had work to do. The ranch didn't run itself, he said, and the storm had set them back 3 days. But he'd be back for dinner, and tomorrow he'd start showing them around properly. Maggie watched him pull on his coat. Can we help? Thornton paused. You want to learn ranch work? I want to learn everything. The words came out fiercer than she intended. I'm not going to be useless. None of us are. He looked at her for a long moment. All right. Tomorrow you ride with me. I'll teach you the basics. What about the others? Hank can help Dan in the stables. He's my foreman. Good man. Patient with kids. He paused, glancing at Joe, who was watching from the corner. Joe can do whatever he wants. Barnhouse, wherever he feels comfortable. You're not going to make him work. I'm not going to make any of you work. This isn't an orphanage. You're not here to earn your keep. Thornton's voice was firm. But if you want to learn, I'll teach you. If you want to help, I'll let you. The choice is yours. Choice. That word again. Maggie filed it away. The day passed in a blur of small discoveries. The house had 7 bedrooms, a library with more books than Maggie had ever seen, a kitchen bigger than her entire tenement apartment in New York. Mrs. Hensley put them to work small tasks, nothing that felt like punishment. Lucy helped sort buttons. The Murphy twins learned to fold napkins. Hank organized the pantry, counting cans with the intensity of someone who'd learned that knowing exactly how much food existed could mean survival. Joe disappeared. Maggie noticed around midday. Her heart stopped. Where's Joe? She grabbed Hank's arm. When did you last see him? I don't know. Breakfast maybe. Maggie was already running for the door when Mrs. Hensley stopped her. He's in the barn. What? I saw him slip out about an hour ago. Been sitting with the horses ever since. Relief flooded through her, followed immediately by anger. He can't just wander off. He could get lost or hurt, or he's fine. Mrs. Hensley's voice was calm. Let him be. But Maggie. The older woman placed a hand on her shoulder. That child hasn't relaxed once since he got here. Watches everyone, catalogs every exit, sleeps with one eye open. Sound familiar? Maggie felt her face flush. If sitting with horses makes him feel safe, let him sit with horses. He'll come back when he's ready. Maggie wanted to argue, wanted to run to the barn and drag Joe back where she could see him, protect him. But Mrs. Hensley was right. Joe needed space. They all did. Fine. But if he's not back by dinner, then you can go get him. Joe came back on his own an hour before sunset. He slipped through the kitchen door like a shadow, his dark hair tangled with hay. Where were you? Maggie demanded. Barn. There's a horse. A gray one. She let me touch her. You can't just disappear like that. I was worried. I know. Joe didn't apologize. I needed to think. Think about what Joe was quiet for a long moment. About whether I should run. Maggie's blood went cold. I decided not to. For now. Joe looked at her directly. But Maggie, if this goes bad, I'm still leaving. Don't try to stop me. It might not go bad. It always goes bad. Joe's voice was flat. But that man, Thornton, he looked at me today. In the barn. What do you mean looked at you? I mean he saw me. Joe's expression flickered with something Maggie couldn't name. Not through me like most white folks. At me. Like I was real. Like I mattered. Maybe you do matter. Don't. Joe held up a hand. Don't say things like that. I can't afford to believe them. Not yet. Then when I see proof. Joe headed for the stairs. When I see that this isn't just pretty words and warm beds. When I see that he won't throw us out the first time we cause trouble. He disappeared before Maggie could respond. Dinner was quiet. Thornton came back covered in snow, looking exhausted. He ate without speaking, his eyes moving from child to child, cataloging, assessing. Afterward, he gathered them in the parlor. Tomorrow, he said, we start learning. Not just ranch work, everything. Reading, writing, arithmetic, whatever you need. We already know how to read, Maggie said. Most of us anyway. Then you'll learn more. Thornton's voice left no room for argument. This ranch won't run itself forever. When I'm gone, someone's going to take over. I'd rather it be someone who knows what they're doing. When you're gone, Lucy's small voice trembled. Where are you going? Nowhere. Not for a long time. But someday. Thornton paused. Someday, I won't be here. And I want to know that you'll be all right. The children exchanged glances. The Murphy twins held hands. Tommy clutched his blanket. You're planning for us to stay, Maggie said slowly. Forever. I'm planning for you to have choices. Whatever you decide when you're grown, stay, leave. Build your own lives. I want you to have the skills to do it. That's... Maggie didn't have words. Nobody had ever planned a future for her. Nobody had ever assumed she'd have one. That's more than anyone's ever offered us, she finished. It's the least you deserve. Thornton stood. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we work. He walked out. Maggie sat in the parlor long after the others had gone to bed. The fire had burned down to embers when she heard footsteps. Joe settled into the chair across from her. You should be sleeping. So should you. They sat in silence, watching the embers glow. He means it, Joe said finally. About the future. About us staying. You believe him. I believe he believes it. Joe's voice was careful. Whether reality lets him keep that promise. That's different. What would change your mind? Joe thought about it. Time. If we're still here in a month, in 6 months, in a year, and nothing bad has happened, then maybe I'll start believing. A year is a long time to wait. I've waited longer. Joe looked at her. I waited 2 years for my ma to come back. She never did. But I kept waiting anyway, because that's what you do when you've got nothing else. You've got us now. Joe didn't respond for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. Yeah, I do. He stood. Get some sleep, Maggie. Tomorrow's coming. He walked out, leaving her alone with the dying fire. Maggie stared at the embers until they went dark. Then she climbed the stairs, checked on each sleeping child, and finally let herself close her eyes. For the first time in 3 years, she didn't dream about fire. She dreamed about horses running through snow, about a gray-eyed man who spoke to children like they mattered, about a table big enough for 12, about home. The trouble came on a Sunday. Maggie saw the wagon approaching from the kitchen window. 2 horses moving fast despite the snow. A black shape in the driver's seat. Someone's coming. She set down the bread dough she'd been kneading. Mrs. Hensley looked up, squinted through the frost-covered glass, and went pale. Get the children upstairs. Why? Who is it? Just do it. Now. Maggie didn't argue. She'd learned to recognize danger in adult voices, and Mrs. Hensley's tone screamed it. She wiped flour from her hands and ran. The children were scattered through the house. Hank in the parlor with a book. Lucy playing with buttons on the floor, the Murphy twins whispering in the corner, Tommy napping on the settee. Upstairs. Maggie kept her voice low but urgent. All of you. Now. Why? Hank looked up, fear already blooming in his eyes. What's wrong? I don't know yet. Just go. The younger children moved without question. They'd done this before, fled from trouble, hidden from danger. The instinct was burned into their bones. Where's Joe? Maggie grabbed Samuel's arm. Barn. He went to see the horses. Go upstairs. Lock the door. Don't come out until I come get you. But Maggie, go. They went. Maggie turned toward the front of the house just as the door crashed open. Reverend Ezra Blackwood stood in the entrance hall, snow swirling around him like a dark halo. Behind him were two men she didn't recognize. Big, hard-faced, the kind of men who got paid to hurt people. Where is Nathaniel Thornton? Blackwood's voice was silk wrapped around a blade. He's not here. Maggie planted herself in the hallway, blocking the path to the stairs. Working the cattle. Won't be back till evening. Perfect. Blackwood's smile made her skin crawl. Then we'll take the children and be gone before he returns. Maggie's blood turned to ice. You can't do that. I can and I will. Blackwood reached into his coat, pulled out a folded document. This is a court order from Judge Whitmore in Cheyenne. It declares Nathaniel Thornton's guardianship null and void and remands all 10 children to my custody pending formal hearing. You're lying. I assure you I am not. Blackwood stepped closer. His eyes were cold, empty like a snake's. Mr. Thornton may have bought you with money, but he cannot buy legitimacy. A single man living alone with no wife, no experience raising children. The territorial court takes a dim view of such arrangements. He's been good to us. Maggie's voice shook, but she held her ground. Better than anyone. I'm sure he has. Blackwood tucked the document away. But goodness is not the issue. Propriety is. Legality is. Now gather your siblings and come quietly. I'd hate for this to become unpleasant. I'm not going anywhere with you. The first man moved fast. Brutal. His hand clamped around Maggie's arm, wrenching it behind her back. Pain shot through her shoulder. She bit back a scream. Let her go. Joe's voice cut through the entrance hall like a whip crack. Maggie twisted her head. Joe stood at the back door, a knife in his hand. Not a kitchen knife. Something longer, sharper. A skinning blade from the barn. Well, well. Blackwood's smile widened. The silent one speaks. Let my sister go. Joe's hand was steady. His eyes were steadier. Or I'll cut you. You're 9-year-old boy. Put down the knife before you hurt yourself. Joe descended the 3 steps from the back door slowly, deliberately. The blade caught the light. I've hurt people before. His voice was flat, emotionless. When they tried to take me places I didn't want to go. Last man who grabbed me lost 2 fingers. Maggie felt the grip on her arm loosen slightly. The man holding her was looking at Joe with something approaching unease. You're bluffing, Blackwood said, but his confidence had cracked. Try me. The standoff stretched, tension thick enough to choke on. Where was Thornton? Where was Dan? Where was anyone who could help? The front door opened again. What in God's name is going on here? A woman's voice. Sharp, commanding. Maggie craned her neck. A woman stood in the doorway. Tall, auburn-haired, dressed in practical wool with a rifle slung over her shoulder like she knew how to use it. Mrs. Holloway. Blackwood's tone cooled. This doesn't concern you. A man breaking into my neighbor's home with hired thugs? I'd say it concerns me plenty. The woman Maddie Holloway. Maggie remembered Thornton had mentioned her, stepped inside, her hand resting on the rifle. Let the girl go. Now. I have a court order. I don't care if you have a letter from the Almighty himself. You don't drag children out of their home. Maddie's eyes were ice. Let her go. The man released Maggie's arm. She stumbled forward, caught herself immediately, positioned herself between Blackwood and the stairs. "This isn't over." Blackwood's voice was tight with barely controlled rage. "The law is on my side. Those children belong in proper Christian custody, not with a godless bachelor who thinks he can buy whatever he wants. Then take it up with the courts, properly, through legal channels, not with thugs in ambush." Maddie raised the rifle slightly. "Now get out of this house before I decide you're trespassing." Blackwood held her gaze for a long, poisonous moment. Then he turned on his heel and strode out. His men followed. The door slammed behind them. Maddie lowered the rifle, let out a long breath. "Everyone all right?" Maggie's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the floor, shaking so badly her teeth chattered. "Maggie." Joe was beside her instantly, the knife discarded. "Maggie, breathe. They're gone. Breathe. I'm okay." She wasn't okay. She was terrified and furious and sick with the knowledge of how close they'd come. "I'm okay." Maddie knelt beside them. "You must be Maggie. Eli's told me about you. He says you're the bravest person he's ever met." Maddie helped her to her feet. "I'm starting to see why." The other children had crept downstairs. Tommy was crying. Lucy clutched her button collection like a lifeline. The Murphy twins were pale as ghosts. "What's going to happen?" Rose whispered. "Are they going to take us away?" "Not if I have anything to say about it." Maddie's jaw set. "Let's get word to Eli. Then we'll figure out our next move." Thornton came home like a storm given flesh. Maggie heard the horse before she saw it, hooves pounding frozen ground coming fast. Then the front door crashed open, and Thornton was there, wild-eyed, breathing hard. "Where are they?" His voice was barely human. "I'll kill them. I'll kill them all. They're gone." Maddie stepped forward, hands raised. "Eli. Eli, look at me. The children are safe. Everyone's okay." He grabbed her. His gaze found Maggie, found the bruise already forming on her arm where the man had gripped her. He put his hands on my daughter. The word hit Maggie like a physical blow. "I'm fine," she managed. Joe scared them off. Thornton looked at Joe. Something flickered across his face. Pride, fear, both. "Show me the court order." He took it with him. But he said it was from Judge Whitmore in Cheyenne. Whitmore. Thornton's jaw clenched. That snake. Blackwood must have bribed him. "Can he do that?" Hank asked. "Can a judge just take us away?" Thornton knelt down, bringing himself to Hank's eye level. "Listen to me. All of you." He waited until 10 pairs of eyes were fixed on him. "Nobody is taking you anywhere. I don't care what papers they wave or what judges they've bought. You're my family. I will fight for you with everything I have. But what if you lose?" Tommy's voice was barely a whisper. "Then I'll keep fighting. And when I'm done fighting, I'll find another way." Thornton's voice was fierce. "I'm not giving up on you. Not ever." "Do you understand?" Tommy nodded, tears streaming down his face. "Good." Thornton stood, turned to Maddie. "I need to get to Cheyenne, talk to a real judge, get this thrown out. In this weather, the passes are barely open. I don't care." "Eli." Maddie gripped his arm. "Think. If you leave now, you leave these children unprotected. Blackwood could come back with more men, more papers. Then what do you suggest? Send Dan to Cheyenne. He knows the territory. You stay here, protect your family, and we gather support from the town." "The town." Thornton laughed bitterly. "The town that's been calling me crazy for taking in 10 orphans. Not everyone." Maddie's voice was firm. "There are good people here, Eli. Let me talk to them." Maggie watched the exchange, the way Maddie spoke to Thornton like an equal, the way he looked at her like she mattered. "Fine." Thornton ran a hand through his hair. "Dan goes tomorrow. You work on the town, and I stay with my children, where you belong." Maddie finished. After she left, Thornton gathered them in the parlor. "I need you to tell me exactly what happened. Every detail." Maggie told it. The arrival, Blackwood's words, the court order, the man grabbing her arm. She told it flat and factual, the way you reported battlefield casualties. When she got to Joe and the knife, Thornton turned to the boy. Joe. Is it true what you said about the man who tried to take you before? Joe nodded once. Why didn't you tell anyone? Who would I tell? Joe's voice was soft. Nobody believes orphans. We're just things to be used. The silence was deafening. I'm sorry. Thornton's voice cracked. I'm sorry that happened to you. All of you. You deserved better. It's not your fault, Maggie said. No, but I can make sure it never happens again. He looked at each of them. From now on, nobody goes anywhere alone. We stay together. Watch out for each other. If Blackwood or anyone else comes here again, you run. Hide. Make noise. Whatever it takes. What if help doesn't come? Samuel asked. Help will always come. Thornton's voice was fierce. Because I will always come, no matter what. Do you believe me? Samuel looked at Maggie. Maggie looked at Joe. Joe looked at Hank. Down the line it went, some silent communication passing between them. We believe you, Maggie said finally. But we're done running. We're done being scared. If they want to take us, they'll have to fight all of us. Thornton stared at her. Then slowly he nodded. All right then. We fight together. The days that followed were a blur of preparation and fear. Dan rode for Cheyenne at dawn, carrying letters to every judge, lawyer, and official who might listen. Maddie made good on her promise, going door to door in town. The response surprised everyone. It started small. A pie left on the porch. A bundle of warm clothes by the gate. Then people started coming in person. Miss Abigail Foster, the schoolteacher, arrived with a basket of books. I heard what happened. She stood awkwardly in the parlor. I wanted you to know that not everyone agrees with Reverend Blackwood. Could have fooled me, Maggie muttered. Maggie, Thornton warned. No, she's right. Miss Foster's face reddened. We haven't been welcoming. We've gossiped and judged. She set down the basket. I'm sorry. These are for the children. More people came. The blacksmith, the doctor's wife, even the general store owner who'd refused to serve Thornton for a week after the auction. Why now? Maggie asked Thornton one evening. Why do they care now? Because they finally saw what Blackwood really is. What is he really? A man who cares more about power than people. Thornton sat heavily. He's been trying to control this town for years. The orphan placements are just part of it. So we're just pieces in his game. You were. Not anymore. The court date came faster than expected. Dan returned from Cheyenne with news. Judge Harrison, a circuit judge known for fairness, had agreed to hear the case. Blackwood's order from Judge Whitmore had been suspended pending review. They had 2 weeks to prepare. It's not enough time. Thornton paced the parlor. Blackwood's had months. He's got money, connections, the church behind him. And what do you have? Maddie asked. 10 kids and a ranch. You have more than that. Maddie caught his arm. You have the truth. You have people who've seen what you've done for these children. She paused. And you have me. Something passed between them. I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering. Thornton was silent. Then he took her hand. Thank you. The night before the trial, Maggie couldn't sleep. She crept downstairs and found Thornton at the kitchen table. A single candle burned, papers spread before him. You should be resting, she said. So should you. She sat down across from him. What are those testimonials? From people in town. He pushed a stack toward her. Read them. Maggie picked up the first letter, then the second, then the third. They were stories about Thornton, how he'd helped a farmer rebuild after a fire, given extra pay to workers during hard winters, quietly paid medical bills for families who couldn't afford them. I didn't know you did any of this. Wasn't for show, just seemed right. These could help. Maybe. Thornton gathered the letters. But it's not really about me. It's about you kids, whether you're better off here or somewhere else. We're better off here. The judge might not see it that way. A bachelor with no experience, no wife, no proper family structure. Family isn't about structure. Maggie's voice was fierce. Family is about who shows up, who stays, who fights for you even when it's hard. Thornton looked at her. When did you start believing that Maggie thought about it? When you talked to Tommy about fires going out? When you said my daughter like it meant something? When Joe almost killed a man to protect me, and you didn't punish him, you thanked him. I meant all of it. I know. Maggie reached across the table. That's why we're going to win. The courtroom smelled like old wood and cold fear. Maggie sat behind Thornton, her siblings pressed close on either side. Tommy clutched his blanket. Lucy held her button collection. Joe sat at the end watching the exits. Judge William Harrison took his seat. Silver-haired, deep-lined face eyes that missed nothing. This court is now in session. The matter before us is the custody of 10 minor children currently residing with Mr. Nathaniel Thornton. Reverend Ezra Blackwood has petitioned to have these children removed. Mr. Thornton contests this petition. Blackwood sat at one table flanked by a lawyer in an expensive suit. He looked calm, confident, righteous. Thornton sat alone. Reverend Blackwood. The judge nodded. Present your case. Blackwood stood. Your Honor, this is a simple matter of propriety. Mr. Thornton is a bachelor with no experience raising children. He lives alone with no wife to guide young girls. He paused for effect. Furthermore, he acquired these children by essentially purchasing them at auction. This is commerce, not adoption, and commerce has no place in the sacred duty of raising children. Maggie's hands clenched. The church offers these children structure, education, moral guidance. We have trained staff, proper facilities. Blackwood's voice oozed sincerity. Mr. Thornton, whatever his intentions, simply cannot provide what these children need. The judge nodded. Mr. Thornton, your response. Thornton stood. Your Honor, I'm not going to pretend I know what I'm doing. When I stepped onto that platform 3 weeks ago, I didn't have a plan. I saw 10 children being torn apart and I couldn't walk away. He paused. The Reverend is right. I'm a bachelor. I live alone. I paid money to take these children home. But he's wrong about what that means. Explain. I didn't buy these children. I bought their freedom. Freedom from being separated. Freedom from being sold to families who saw them as labor, not people. His voice hardened. I've seen what happens to children placed through the Reverend's program. Worked to death. Beaten. Worse things I won't speak aloud. Objection. Blackwood shot to his feet. Baseless accusations. Sit down, Reverend. Judge Harrison's voice was ice. You'll have your chance. Thornton continued. I don't have a wife, but I have Mrs. Ruth Hensley who's helped run my household for 20 years and raised 3 children of her own. I have Maddie Holloway who visits daily to help with education. I have an entire community who've come forward. He turned to look at the children. And I have 10 of the bravest people I've ever met. They don't need me to save them. They've already saved themselves. All I'm doing is giving them a place to keep doing it. The judge was quiet. I'd like to hear from the children. Your Honor. Blackwood interjected. Surely you can't take the word of I can and I will. These are the people whose lives we're deciding. The judge looked at Maggie. You're the oldest. Come forward. Maggie stood on shaking legs. She walked to the front, sat in the witness chair. Miss Walsh, tell me about your life before Mr. Thornton. Maggie swallowed. I had parents once. My father worked in a coal mine in Pennsylvania. My mother took in washing. They were good people. What happened? The mine collapsed, crushed my father's chest. He died 2 weeks later. My mother couldn't work enough to support us. She got sick. Fever took her 6 months after, and then St. Catherine's Orphanage. 2 years of sharing beds with strangers, eating watered-down soup, being told we were burdens. Then the train brought us west. They said we'd find families. Instead, we found auctions. And Mr. Thornton Maggie looked at him. He didn't poke at us like cattle. He didn't ask how much work we could do. He asked if we wanted to come with him. He gave us a choice. Nobody ever gave us a choice before. Has he been good to you? He sat with my little brother during nightmares. He let Joe have space when Joe needed it. He's learning to braid Lucy's hair because he noticed she missed having someone do it. Her voice cracked. He's trying. Every day, he's trying. That's more than anyone's ever done for us. Thank you, Miss Walsh. The judge turned to Blackwood. Your witness. Blackwood stood, circled closer. Miss Walsh, you seem very articulate. Almost rehearsed. Nobody rehearsed me. Of course not. He smiled. Tell me, did Mr. Thornton ever explain why he really took you in? He told us about his brother William, the one who died in the war. So you know he has a history of loss, of failure. He couldn't save his own brother, and now he's trying to ease his guilt by playing savior. Maggie's temper flared. Isn't it a damaged man using damaged children to make himself feel better? No. Her voice was steel. What's happening is a good man trying to do the right thing, something you wouldn't understand. I understand plenty, child. Blackwood leaned closer. I understand that you're protecting him because you're afraid. Afraid that if you tell the truth, you'll be thrown back into the system. Nothing happens in that house except kindness. Maggie was on her feet now. You want to talk about what happens in houses? Let's talk about the placements you made. Let's talk about the Miller farm where Johnny Thompson lost 3 fingers to frostbite because they made him sleep in the barn. Let's talk about the Henderson family who beat Mary Sullivan so badly she couldn't walk. That's enough. Judge Harrison's voice cut through. Miss Walsh, please sit down. Reverend, control your questioning. Maggie sank back. She'd gone too far. She'd ruined everything. But when she looked at the judge, she didn't see anger. She saw something else entirely. I'd like to hear from the other children. One at a time. Hank went next. Spoke in a voice barely above a whisper about his fear of loud noises, about how Thornton warned him before making sudden sounds. Lucy talked about button collections and bedtime stories, about feeling safe for the first time since her family died. Tommy couldn't stop crying long enough to speak, but his grip on his blanket said everything. Then it was Joe's turn. He walked to the witness chair like he was walking to an execution. Small, thin, dark skin, stark against the white courtroom. Mr. Carter. Judge Harrison's voice was gentle. Do you have anything you'd like to say? Joe was quiet for a long moment. I don't trust people, he said finally. Never have. My pa was killed when I was 5. Men in white hoods. Said he didn't know his place. The courtroom went silent. My ma and I ran. For 2 years. Then she died and I was alone. Lived on the streets. Learned that nobody helps you. Nobody cares. Has that changed? Joe looked at Thornton. That man stopped Blackwood from hitting Maggie. He didn't have to. Nobody asked him to. He just did it. Joe's voice wavered slightly. And then he bought us. All 10 of us. Because he didn't want us separated. What does that mean to you? It means maybe I was wrong. Maybe some people do care. Joe's hands were shaking now. I don't trust Easy. Probably never will. But I trust him, and I trust my family. He looked at Maggie. If you take us away from here, I'll run. I'll take them all and I'll run. Because I'd rather die free than live in one of Blackwood's placements. The courtroom was absolutely silent. Thank you, Mr. Carter. Judge Harrison's voice was thick. You may step down. Joe walked back to his seat. Maggie grabbed his hand, held it tight. The judge called a recess. They huddled together in the hallway. All 10 of them. The way they'd huddled on the auction platform a lifetime ago. Did I mess it up? Joe asked. You were perfect. Maggie squeezed his hand. You were all perfect. Thornton stood apart, talking quietly with Maddie. His face was pale, drawn. What do you think will happen? Lucy whispered. I don't know. The bailiff called them back in. Judge Harrison took his seat. I've heard testimony from both sides. I've reviewed the documentation. I've listened to 10 children speak with remarkable honesty and courage. He paused. Custody matters are never simple. We must balance child welfare against societal norms, religious considerations, practical concerns. Reverend Blackwood raises valid points about Mr. Thornton's unconventional situation. Maggie's heart sank. However, the judge leaned forward. I am compelled to consider the testimony of the children themselves. These are not infants. These are young people who have survived hardships that would break many adults. He looked directly at Blackwood. Furthermore, I am troubled by aspects of the Reverend's petition. The original order from Judge Whitmore has been rescinded pending investigation. Several former placements have come forward with disturbing allegations. Blackwood's face went white. Mr. Thornton's methods may be unorthodox, but I find no evidence of harm. On the contrary, every witness testified to improvement in these children's circumstances. The judge straightened. It is therefore the ruling of this court that the custody petition filed by Reverend Ezra Blackwood is denied. The 10 minor children shall remain in the legal guardianship of Nathaniel Thornton. Maggie couldn't breathe. Furthermore, the judge continued, I am recommending that territorial authorities investigate Reverend Blackwood's placement practices. Until such investigation is complete, all his placement activities are suspended. The courtroom erupted. People cheering, crying, shouting. Blackwood being pulled toward the door by his lawyer. And then, arms around her. Her siblings. Mrs. Hensley. Maddie. Thornton knelt in front of them, eyes bright. We won. Hank breathed. We won. Thornton confirmed. You're staying, all of you. Forever. Tommy launched himself at Thornton, then Lucy, then the Murphy twins. Even Joe moved closer, letting himself be pulled into the embrace. Maggie stood apart for just a moment. Then Thornton looked at her, held out his hand. She took it. Welcome home, he said, for real this time. The celebration lasted well into the evening. Back at the ranch, Mrs. Hensley had prepared a feast, roast beef, fresh bread, apple pie still warm from the oven. More food than the children had seen in years. Maddie stayed for dinner sitting beside Thornton in a way that made Maggie smile. The townspeople who'd come to the trial drifted in and out, bringing dishes offering congratulations, apologizing for years of cold shoulders. Through it all, Maggie watched her family. Her real family. The one they'd built from broken pieces. Something unfamiliar settled in her chest. Peace. You're quiet. Joe appeared beside her plate in hand. Just thinking. Dangerous habit. Maggie almost laughed. When did you get funny? I've always been funny. You just never noticed. Joe took a bite of pie. This is good, really good. Don't get used to it. Too late. Joe's voice softened. I'm already used to it, Maggie. All of it. The food, the beds, the not being scared every second of every day. Is that bad? I don't know. He stared at his plate. Feels like I'm waiting for something terrible to happen. Like this is all gonna disappear. Maybe it won't. Maybe. Joe looked at her. But if it does, we'll survive. We always do. Yeah. Maggie bumped his shoulder. We always do. After the younger children had been put to bed, Maggie found Thornton on the porch. He stood alone, staring at the snow-covered land. His breath fogged in the cold air. Can't sleep too much to think about. She stood beside him. We really won. We really did. What happens now? Now Thornton was quiet for a moment. Now we live. We build something. We become a family for real, not just on paper. We're already a family. He turned to look at her. When did you start believing that Maggie thought about it? In the courtroom. When Joe said he trusted you. When Tommy stopped crying because you were holding him. When Lucy smiled for the first time since her parents died. She paused. We've been a family since you bought us Mr. Thornton. You just didn't know it yet. Eli. What call me Eli? Mr. Thornton was my father. The name felt strange, too familiar, too real. Eli. She tested it. Okay. They stood in silence. Maddie's nice, Maggie said finally. Thornton's expression flickered. She is. She looks at you like you're worth looking at. Maggie. I'm just saying, we wouldn't mind, if you wanted to not be alone anymore. Thornton was quiet for a long time. One thing at a time. First we get you kids settled, get Tommy sleeping through the night, get Joe to stop hiding knives under his pillow. He still does that old habits. They take time to break. But we've got time now. Yeah. Thornton put an arm around her shoulders. We've got all the time in the world. The weeks that followed brought change. Small changes at first. Tommy stopped hiding food under his mattress after Mrs. Hensley started leaving extra biscuits on his nightstand. Hank began speaking in full sentences again, his nightmares fading from nightly terrors to occasional disturbances. Lucy laughed, actually laughed. The sound startled everyone, including herself. The Murphy twins started talking to people other than each other. Patrick asked Thornton to teach him to ride. Rose helped Mrs. Hensley in the kitchen, discovering a talent for baking that surprised everyone. The younger children, Grace, Samuel, Benjamin, bloomed like flowers after rain. They ran through the house, played in the barn, acted like children instead of survivors. And Joe. Joe was the biggest surprise of all. He still watched, still cataloged exits, still kept a knife within reach at all times. But he also started helping Dan in the stables, started eating at the table instead of in corners, started letting himself be part of the family instead of hovering at its edges. One evening Maggie found him in the barn with the gray mare he'd befriended. You're getting attached. So nothing. Maggie leaned against the stall door. It's good. You deserve to have something of your own. She's not mine. She could be. Thornton would give her to you if you asked. Joe's hand stilled on the horse's mane. Why would he do that? Because he wants you to be happy. Joe was quiet for a long moment. My pa used to say that. He said all he wanted was for me to be happy. Then they killed him, and I learned that wanting doesn't mean anything. Maybe it means everything. Maggie stepped closer. Maybe wanting someone to be happy is the whole point. Joe looked at her. You really believe that I'm starting to? The horse nuzzled Joe's shoulder. He smiled. Just a small one, barely there. But it was the first real smile Maggie had seen from him. Maybe I'm starting to believe it too. The adoption papers came in February. Thornton gathered them in the parlor, his face serious. I need to ask you something. All of you. The children exchanged nervous glances. I've filed paperwork to adopt you. Legally. Permanently. But I won't do it without your permission. Thornton looked at each of them in turn. If any of you don't want this, say so now. I'll understand. Silence. Then Tommy raised his hand. Does this mean you'll be our papa, for real, forever, forever? Tommy launched himself at Thornton. Yes, 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 yes. The others followed. Lucy. The Murphy twins. The younger children. Hank hung back uncertain. Maggie touched his shoulder. What is it? What about our real parents? Will we forget them? Thornton knelt in front of Hank. You'll never forget them, and I'd never ask you to. Your parents loved you. They'll always be part of who you are. He took Hank's hand. I'm not trying to replace them. I'm just asking if there's room for one more person to love you. Hank thought about it. Then he nodded. Okay, there's room. Joe was last. He stood apart from the others, watching, always watching. Joe Thornton's voice was gentle. What do you think? I think you're crazy. Joe's voice was flat. Taking in 10 kids, spending all that money, fighting the church and the courts, and everyone who said you were wrong. Probably am crazy. I think you're going to regret it. Maybe. I think something's going to go wrong. It always does. Could be. Joe was quiet. But I also think you mean it. Joe's voice cracked slightly. I think you actually want us. Not for labor. Not for show. Just because. Just because. I don't understand that. I don't understand people who do things just because. You don't have to understand it. Thornton stood slowly. You just have to decide if you want to be part of it. Joe looked at the other children, at Tommy clutching Thornton's leg, at Lucy beaming, at Hank still uncertain but hopeful, at Maggie waiting. He looked at the family he'd never expected to find. Yeah, his voice was rough. I want to be part of it. Then welcome to the family, son. Joe flinched at the word, but he didn't pull away when Thornton put a hand on his shoulder. He leaned into it. The judge who'd saved them officiated the ceremony. It was simple, quick, legal words that made permanent what had already been true in their hearts. Raise your right hands. 11 hands went up, 10 small ones, 1 large one. Do you, Nathaniel Thornton, swear to provide for these children, protect them, guide them, and love them as your own? I do. And do you, Maggie, Hank, Joe, Lucy, Patrick, Rose, Tommy, Grace, Samuel, and Benjamin, accept Nathaniel Thornton as your father? Maggie answered first. I do. The others followed. Then, by the authority vested in me, I declare you a family. The judge smiled. Legal binding and well-deserved. Maggie had thought she'd feel different, lighter, more complete. Instead, she just felt right. Like a bone that had been out of joint finally clicking back into place. Spring came slow that year. The snow melted inch by stubborn inch. Brown earth appeared like promises. The cattle were moved to fresh pastures. The ranch came alive with work and purpose. And the children grew. Maggie learned to ride fence lines to check cattle to read the land the way Thornton did. At 12, she could run basic ranch operations. At 13, she was making decisions that affected the entire property. Hank found his voice through horses. He had a gift for understanding them that bordered on miraculous. Even the most skittish animals calmed under his hands. Joe became Dan's shadow in the stables. He still kept a knife close, still watched exits. But he also laughed sometimes, told jokes, let himself be a kid instead of a survivor. Lucy discovered she loved to bake. Her pies became famous in town. Her smile became even more famous. The Murphy twins separated finally. Not completely, they still shared a room, still finished each other's sentences. But Patrick found a passion for carpentry, while Rose became Mrs. Hensley's apprentice in all things domestic. The younger children thrived. Grace learned to read faster than anyone expected. Samuel discovered a talent for numbers. Benjamin became the family clown, always ready with a joke or a prank. And Maddie Holloway came around more and more often. Her visits stretched from afternoons to evenings, from dinners to overnight stays in the guest room. Everyone noticed. Nobody said anything until Lucy asked over breakfast one morning. Are you and Miss Maddie going to get married? Thornton choked on his coffee. Lucy. What? It's a fair question. She's here all the time. She looks at Papa like Mama used to look at our real Papa. And yesterday I saw them holding hands in the barn. Maddie, who'd been helping Mrs. Hensley with dishes, went very still. Thornton set down his cup. That's a conversation for adults. We're part of this family. Joe's voice was quiet but firm. If something's changing, we should know. Silence stretched. Then Thornton looked at Maddie. She looked back. Something passed between them. You're right, he said finally. You should know. He reached across the table, took Maddie's hand. Maddie and I have been getting to know each other, as more than friends, more than neighbors. And Lucy pressed. And I've asked her to marry me. Tommy's eyes went wide. Does that mean we'll have a mama? Maddie knelt beside his chair. Only if you want one. I'd never try to replace anyone, but I'd very much like to be part of this family, if you'll have me. Maggie watched her siblings. The younger children looked excited. The Murphy twins uncertain. Hank thoughtful. Joe's face was unreadable. Maggie? Thornton's voice was careful. Your opinion matters. Maggie studied Maddie. This woman who'd stood up to Blackwood. Who'd helped them fight. Who looked at their father like he hung the moon. Do you love him very much? Do you love us, all of you? Even when you're difficult? Maggie looked at Joe. Joe gave her a small nod. She looked at Hank. Hank shrugged. She makes good biscuits. She looked at Lucy. Lucy was already climbing into Maddie's lap. Maggie turned back to her father. Okay, welcome to the family. The wedding was small, held at the ranch in early autumn when the aspens turned gold. Just family and close friends. No church. Thornton had made that clear. Maggie served as maid of honor. Hank and Joe stood beside Thornton. Lucy scattered flower petals. The younger children sat in the front row, scrubbed clean and suspiciously well-behaved. Maddie wore a simple cream dress. Thornton wore his best suit. When they exchanged vows, Maggie noticed tears on her father's cheeks. I spent 25 years thinking I didn't deserve happiness. His voice was rough. That losing William meant I had to punish myself forever. Then 10 children fell into my life and taught me that family isn't about blood or deserving. It's about choosing each other. He looked at Maddie. Then at the children. I choose you, all of you, for the rest of my life. The kiss made Tommy giggle and Lucy sigh dreamily. Maggie just smiled. A real smile. The years that followed weren't easy. There were still nightmares. Tommy's fires. Joe's faceless men. Maggie's auction platforms. There were arguments, growing pains. The friction of 12 people learning to live together. There was the terrible winter when Lucy caught pneumonia. 3 weeks of fever and fear, and Thornton pacing the halls like a caged animal. She survived, barely, but it left scars on all of them. There was the summer Joe ran away. He was 14. Something had triggered him, a loud noise. A stranger's face, nobody ever found out what. He disappeared in the night without a word. Maggie found him 3 days later holed up in an abandoned cabin 20 miles north, starving, scared, ready to fight. She sat down outside the cabin door. I'm not leaving without you. I can't go back. Why not? Because I'll ruin it. Joe's voice cracked through the door. I'll mess up again and he'll send me away and it'll be worse than if I'd never belonged in the first place. That's not how this works. That's how it always works. Maggie leaned her head against the door. Papa's been riding all over the territory looking for you. Hasn't slept in 3 days? Maddie's beside herself. The little ones won't stop crying. I didn't mean to hurt them. Then come home. Silence. What if I can't? What if I'm too broken? Then we'll help you put the pieces back together. That's what family does. The door opened. Joe stood there thin and dirty and exhausted. You promise, I promise. He came home. Thornton didn't punish him, didn't lecture him, just held him tight and said, I'm glad you're safe, and that was that. Joe never ran again. But there was also joy. So much joy. Birthdays celebrated for children who'd never had them. Christmas mornings with presents under the tree. Summer days swimming in the creek. Autumn evenings around the fire telling stories, laughing at nothing. Maddie gave birth to twins when Maggie was 15. A boy named William and a girl named Sarah. Suddenly there were 2 more Thorntons, and the older children discovered strong opinions about diaper changing. This is your fault, Maggie told her father one exhausted morning after walking William for 3 hours. You wanted a big family. I wanted you 10. The rest was a bonus. Thornton took the crying baby from her arms. Besides, you love them. Maggie looked at her tiny half-brother finally quieting against their father's chest. Yeah, she admitted. I do. The day Maggie turned 18, everything changed again. She'd been offered a position at a law firm in Denver. Judge Harrison had recommended her. Said she had the sharpest mind he'd seen in 40 years. The firm would pay for her education. Train her. eventually let her practice alongside them. It was everything she'd never dared to dream. It was also 800 miles from home. She found Thornton in the barn brushing down his favorite horse. "You heard. Maddie told me." He didn't stop brushing. "Denver's a good opportunity. I don't have to go." "Yes, you do." He turned to face her. "Maggie, you've been taking care of other people since you were 8. First your siblings, then this whole family. It's time to take care of yourself. But the ranch has your brothers and sisters. And Maddie. And me. We'll manage." His voice softened. "This is what I wanted for you. Not just survival, but life. Real life with choices and futures you get to build for yourself. What if I fail? Then you come home and we figure out something else." Thornton crossed the barn, took her hands. Maggie Walsh. "Thornton, you are the bravest person I've ever known. You faced down grown men to protect your family. You testified against corruption. You held us together through things that would break anyone." He squeezed her hands. "Denver doesn't stand a chance against you." She left in September. The whole family came to see her off. Thornton and Maddie, Mrs. Hensley, all 9 siblings, plus the twins, strapped to Maddie's chest. Hank hugged her so tight she thought her ribs might crack. "Come back soon. I will." Lucy pressed a small package into her hands. "I made you cookies, for the train." "Thank you, sweetheart." Joe was next. He didn't hug her, just pressed their foreheads together the way they'd done in the dark on their first night at the ranch. "Come back strong." "I will." Thornton was last. "I'm proud of you," he said quietly. "I've been proud of you since the moment you slapped that farmer at the auction. But today, watching you choose your own path, this is the proudest I've ever been." "Papa?" The word still felt precious. "I wouldn't be here without you." "Yes, you would. Just somewhere different. Someone was always going to recognize what you are. I just got lucky enough to be first." The train whistle blew. Maggie hugged him one last time, inhaled the scent of leather and horses and home. Then she climbed aboard, found her seat, watched through the window as her family grew smaller and smaller until the train rounded a bend and they disappeared. She didn't cry. She was too busy imagining the future. 20 years later, Maggie stood in a courtroom in Denver, facing down a factory owner who had been working children to death in his textile mill. The room was packed. Journalists scribbled in notebooks. Factory workers sat in the gallery, some hopeful, most terrified of the powerful man Maggie was about to destroy. She thought about her father. Eli Thornton was 70 now. His hair had gone white. His hands weren't as steady as they used to be. But his eyes were still the same winter gray, still kind, still fierce when it came to protecting the people he loved. She thought about her siblings. Hank ran the largest horse training operation in 3 territories. The boy who'd been afraid of loud noises now gentled the wildest stallions with nothing but patience and a soft voice. Joe had become a U.S. Marshal. The boy who'd trusted no one now carried a badge and spent his life protecting others. He'd married a schoolteacher named Rebecca. They had 4 children who called Maggie Aunt Maggie and begged for stories about the old days. Lucy owned a bakery in Cheyenne. Her pies were famous across Wyoming. Her husband, a quiet farmer named Thomas, looked at her like she'd hung the stars. Patrick had taken over the ranch's carpentry, built half the furniture in the county. Rose had married a doctor and moved to San Francisco, but she came home every Christmas without fail. The younger ones had scattered too. Grace taught at a university back east. Samuel ran a bank in Denver. Benjamin had become a preacher, which made everyone who remembered his childhood pranks laugh until they cried. The twins William and Sarah were 20 now. William worked the ranch alongside their father. Sarah had just finished nursing school. All of them, every single one. Living proof that broken children could become whole adults if someone just gave them a chance. Mrs. Thornton. The judge's voice pulled her back. "You may proceed with your closing argument." Maggie stood. She smoothed her jacket, took a breath. Let her gaze move across the courtroom until it landed on the factory owner, a man named Morrison, who'd built his fortune on the backs of children. Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen, my opponent has spent the last 3 days telling you about profit margins, about economic necessity, about the practical realities of running a business in this modern age. She paused. But I'm not here to talk about profit margins. I'm here to talk about 27 children who worked 14-hour days in conditions that would shame a prison. I'm here to talk about 3 children who died because safety measures were too expensive to implement. I'm here to talk about every child who has ever been told they are less valuable than the products they produce. Her voice hardened. My client isn't just seeking damages. She's seeking recognition. Recognition that children are people, not machinery. That their lives have value beyond the labor they can extract. That in this country, in this century, we can do better. She moved closer to the jury. I was an orphan once, auctioned off in a Wyoming winter to whoever would pay for me. I know what it means to be seen as merchandise, to be poked and prodded and priced like cattle, to have adults decide your worth based on how much work they could squeeze out of you. Her voice strengthened. And I know what it means to be saved, to have someone look at you and see a person instead of a product, to be given a chance to become something more than anyone ever expected. She turned to face Morrison directly. These children deserve that chance. They deserve to grow up, to learn, to become doctors and lawyers and teachers and parents. Instead, they were ground up in your machines and thrown away like broken tools. Morrison's face was red. His lawyer was scribbling furiously. Maggie didn't care. We cannot look away, she said. Not anymore. Not ever again. These children cannot speak for themselves, so I will speak for them. And I am asking you, begging you to tell the world that their lives mattered, that they mattered, that in this country, no profit margin is worth a child's life. She returned to her seat. The verdict took 2 hours. Guilty. Morrison was sentenced to 15 years. His factory was shut down. The families of the dead children received compensation that couldn't bring back their babies, but might help them survive. And Maggie Walsh Thornton became the most famous lawyer in Colorado. She didn't care about the fame, she cared about the children. Always the children. The telegram arrived 3 days later. Papa, sick. Stop, come home. Stop, Joe. Maggie was on the next train. The journey took 2 days. 2 days of staring out windows. 2 days of remembering. 2 days of praying to a God she wasn't sure she believed in anymore. Please. Not yet. Not yet. Joe met her at the station. He was 40 now. Gray at his temples. Lines around his eyes. But he still moved like the boy who'd kept a knife under his pillow, still watched exits, still didn't trust easily. How bad? Joe helped her into the wagon. Doctor says his heart. Could be days, could be weeks. Nobody knows. Is he conscious in and out? He keeps asking for you. The ranch looked the same. The big wooden arch with Thornton burned into the timber. The house of stone and timber. The barns and stables stretching into the distance. But it felt different. Smaller somehow. Quieter. Sadder. Maddie met her at the door. At 60, she was still beautiful, still strong. But there were shadows under her eyes that hadn't been there before. He's upstairs, she said. Been waiting for you. Maggie climbed the stairs. Each step felt like a mile. Each heartbeat felt like a prayer. The bedroom door was open. She stepped inside. Eli Thornton lay in the bed where he'd slept for 50 years. Where he'd dreamed about the brother he couldn't save. Where he'd held his wife and loved his children and built a life from nothing but stubbornness and hope. He looked small. Maggie had never thought of him as small. Hey, Papa. His eyes opened, found her face, and he smiled. There's my girl. She crossed to the bed, took his hand. It was thin now, papery, but his grip was still strong. You came. Of course I came. You didn't have to. The trial is over. We won. Course you did. He chuckled weakly. You always win. Not always. always when it matters." Maggie felt tears burning behind her eyes. She hadn't cried in years, hadn't allowed herself to. But sitting here holding her father's hand, she felt 11 years old again, scared and brave and desperate for someone to tell her everything would be okay. "Papa." "Shh." He squeezed her hand. "I need to tell you something." "You don't have to, I do." He struggled to sit up. "Let me say this while I still can." Maggie helped him, propped pillows behind his back, tried not to notice how light he was. "I've lived a good life," Eli said. "Better than I deserved, better than I ever expected. And it's because of you, Papa." "Let me finish." His eyes were fierce now. "That day at the auction, when I saw you standing there ready to fight the whole world to protect your siblings, I thought that's the bravest person I've ever seen. That's someone who understands what family means. I was just trying to survive." "No. You were trying to save them. There's a difference." Eli's voice cracked. "I couldn't save William. Couldn't save my own brother. That guilt ate at me for 25 years. And then you came along and you saved me. I didn't save you. You did. Every day. Every time you trusted me a little more. Every time you called me Papa. Every time you let me be part of your family." Eli's tears fell freely now. "You gave me something to live for. All of you did. You made me want to be better. Want to deserve you." Maggie couldn't speak. The tears were coming too fast. "I need you to do something for me," Eli said. "Anything. Take care of them, when I'm gone. Maddie. Your brothers and sisters, the little ones. Keep them together. Keep them fighting for each other. I will. And don't stop." His grip tightened. "Don't stop fighting for the children nobody wants, the ones the world throws away. Promise me. I promise." "Good." He relaxed slightly. "That's good." He was quiet for a moment. "There's one more thing. What I need you to forgive yourself." "For what?" "For not trusting me faster. For all those years you spent waiting for me to disappoint you. For every moment you held back because you were afraid. Papa, I know you still carry that." Eli's eyes found hers. "I see it in you. The part that's still waiting for the other shoe to drop. The part that can't quite believe good things are allowed to last. I'm trying. I know. And I need you to know it was never your fault. None of it. Not your parents dying, not the orphanage, not the train, not any of it. You were a child who deserved better and the world failed you. But you didn't fail. You survived. You protected your family. You became something extraordinary." His voice was fading now. "And I am so proud to be your father." Maggie broke. The tears she'd held back for 30 years came flooding out. She buried her face in her father's chest and sobbed like the little girl she'd never been allowed to be. Eli held her. His arms were weak, but his love was strong. "It's okay," he whispered. "It's okay. I've got you. I've always got you." They stayed like that until his breathing evened out and he slept. The others arrived over the next 3 days. Hank came first, riding hard from Montana. He walked into the sick room and dropped to his knees beside the bed. "I came as fast as I could." "I know." Eli touched his face. "Look at you. All grown up. Still got hay in your hair." Hank laughed through his tears. "Some things don't change." "Good. Don't change. Stay exactly who you are." Lucy arrived with her husband and 3 children. She baked 7 pies in the first hour because she didn't know what else to do with her hands. Patrick came from town, Rose from San Francisco, the younger ones from wherever their lives had taken them. Even Joe's children came. 4 little ones who barely knew their grandfather, but sensed somehow that this was important. The house filled with people, with noise, with love. And at the center of it all, Eli Thornton lay in his bed and smiled. "Look at them," he told Maggie during a quiet moment. "Look at what we built. You built this. We built it together." Outside, children ran through the yard. Adults laughed and cried and remembered. The next generation of Thorntons already learning what family meant. "This is what matters," Eli said. "Not the land, not the cattle, not the money. This. I know. Promise me you'll remember that. When you're back in Denver fighting your cases, changing the world. Promise me you'll remember what really matters. I promise." He closed his eyes. Good. That's good. His last day came on a Sunday. The whole family gathered in the bedroom. Maddie sat on one side holding his hand. Maggie sat on the other. The others crowded around, nobody willing to be too far away. Eli drifted in and out. Sometimes he recognized faces. Sometimes he talked to people who weren't there. "William," he said once. "Is that you?" Maggie looked at Joe. Joe looked at Hank. Who was William? His brother. The one who died in the war. Eli smiled at something only he could see. "You look good. Healthy. I'm sorry I couldn't save you." Silence. "But I saved them." Eli's voice was faint. "All 10 of them. I saved them, William. I finally did something right." "You did, Papa." Maggie squeezed his hand. "You saved us." He turned his head, found her face. "My girl. I'm here. You're going to change the world. I'm going to try, not try. Will. You will." He smiled. "Because you're a Thornton. And Thorntons don't quit." His breathing slowed. "Maddie. I'm here, my love. Thank you. For giving me a second chance. For loving me even when I didn't deserve it. You always deserved it." He closed his eyes. "Tell them I love them. Tell them all. We will. And tell them..." He took a breath. "Tell them family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up, who stays, who fights for you." His hand went limp. The room was silent. Then Maddie began to cry. And one by one the others followed. They buried him on the hill overlooking the ranch. The whole territory came. Ranchers and townspeople. Former orphans he'd helped place in good homes. Politicians and paupers. Rich and poor. All of them gathered to say goodbye to a man who'd changed their lives. Maggie stood at the grave and looked out at the crowd. "My father," she began, then stopped. Collected herself. "My father was not a perfect man. He was stubborn, demanding, had a temper that could peel paint off walls." Soft laughter from the crowd. "But he was also the most loving person I've ever known. He took in 10 orphans when the world said he was crazy. He fought for us when everyone said we weren't worth fighting for. He taught us that family isn't about blood, it's about choice." She looked at her siblings. "He chose us. Every day. Even when we made it hard. Even when we pushed him away. Even when we didn't deserve it. He chose us." Her voice strengthened. "And that choice saved our lives. It saved mine. It gave 10 broken children the chance to become whole adults, to become lawyers and marshals and teachers and ranchers, to build families of our own and pass on what he taught us." She touched the headstone. "My father's legacy isn't this ranch. It isn't the money or the land or the cattle. His legacy is us. His legacy is every child we've saved because he showed us how. His legacy is every family we've built because he taught us what family means." She stepped back. "Rest now, Papa. We've got it from here." The crowd dispersed slowly. People offered condolences, shared memories, promised to stay in touch. But eventually it was just the family. 12 siblings, their spouses, their children, Maddie, standing together on a hill in Wyoming saying goodbye to the man who'd made them whole. Maggie. Joe's voice soft and rough. "Yeah. What happens now?" Maggie looked at her brother. At the boy who'd kept a knife under his pillow, who'd trusted no one, who'd run away because he thought he didn't deserve to belong. He was a father now, a grandfather, a man who'd dedicated his life to protecting others because someone had once protected him. "Now we keep going," Maggie said. "We raise our children, we fight our battles, We show up for each other. That's what he wanted. Joe nodded slowly. That's what he wanted. They stood together as the sun set over the mountains. The next generation of Thorntons played in the yard below, laughing, running, living the lives their parents had fought to give them. Maggie watched them, and for the first time since she'd received the telegram, she smiled. 2 years later, Maggie stood in another courtroom. This one was bigger, grander. The United States Supreme Court. She'd argued the case of her life. Children's labor rights, national legislation, a chance to change things not just in Colorado, but across the entire country. The justices had listened, asked questions, challenged her at every turn. Now they were deliberating. Maggie sat in the gallery and waited. Her siblings had come, all of them. Joe and Hank and Lucy and the rest, plus Maddie and the twins and more grandchildren than anyone could count. The Thornton family showing up for each other one more time. The doors opened. The Chief Justice entered. All rise. Maggie stood. In the matter of Thornton versus United States, the Chief Justice announced this court finds in favor of the plaintiff. The gallery erupted. Maggie couldn't hear anything over the roaring in her ears. She'd won. She'd actually won. Furthermore, the Chief Justice continued, "We recommend that Congress implement immediate legislation protecting the rights of working children across all territories and states. No child in this nation should be treated as property. No child should be denied the chance to grow, learn, and become the person they were meant to be." Maggie felt arms around her. Her siblings. Her family. "You did it," Joe said. "You actually did it." "We did it," Maggie corrected. "All of us. Together." She thought about the children this would save, the ones who would grow up to be doctors and lawyers and teachers, the ones who would have families of their own, the ones who would pass on the legacy of what it meant to be valued. She thought about her father, and she knew wherever he was smiling. That night, the family gathered at Joe's house in Washington. 3 generations of Thorntons crowded around tables that weren't big enough, eating food that never seemed to run out, telling stories that had been told 1,000 times before. Maggie stood in the doorway watching. Lucy was teaching her grandchildren to make pie crust. Hank was telling horse stories to a captivated audience of 5-year-olds. The Murphy twins were arguing about politics while their spouses exchanged long-suffering looks. Joe appeared beside her. "Remember when you found me in that cabin?" Maggie nodded. "I told you that nobody helps anybody. That caring was a weakness. That families just meant more people to lose. You were wrong. I was terrified." Joe's voice was quiet. Terrified of wanting something I couldn't have. Terrified of believing and being disappointed. Terrified of letting myself belong. "What changed? You came for me." Joe looked at her. "Nobody had ever come for me before. But you did. And then Papa did. And then I realized that maybe, just maybe, I was allowed to have good things." Maggie took his hand. "We all realized that. Eventually. In our own ways. Because of him. Because of him." They stood together watching their family laugh and argue and love each other. "Do you think he knows?" Joe asked. "What we've become. What his legacy turned into." "I think so. I hope so." Joe's voice cracked slightly. "I hope he knows that the scared kid who slept with a knife isn't scared anymore. That the boy who ran away learned how to stay. That the orphan nobody wanted became someone who mattered." "You always mattered," Maggie said. "He knew that. He saw it before any of us did." Joe nodded. "He did. That was his gift. Seeing what people could become instead of what they were." The party went late into the night. Stories were told. Songs were sung. Children fell asleep in corners and were carried to bed by parents who remembered being carried themselves. And when it was finally quiet, when the dishes were done and the guests had gone, Maggie stepped outside. The stars were bright over Washington. Different stars than Wyoming. Different sky. But somehow standing there, she felt closer to home than ever. Thank you, Papa. The words were barely a whisper. Thank you for seeing us, for choosing us, for teaching us what family means. She thought about all the children she'd saved over the years, all the cases she'd won, all the laws she'd helped change. And she thought about 10 orphans standing on an auction platform in Wyoming, terrified and defiant, and absolutely certain that nobody would ever want them. She thought about a man stepping out of the crowd, paying an impossible price, saying a single word that changed everything. Family. Maggie smiled. Then she went inside where her own family was waiting. 50 years later, they built a statue. In the town square of the little Wyoming town where it all began, they erected a bronze monument. A man standing with his hand extended. 10 children gathered around him, the oldest girl reaching up to take his hand. The plaque read, "In memory of Nathaniel Thornton, who taught a generation that family is about who shows up." Maggie didn't see the unveiling. She'd passed peacefully in her sleep 3 years earlier, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who knew her story by heart. But Joe was there, 90 years old, white-haired, still straight-backed, still watching exits out of habit. He stood in front of the statue and looked up at his father's bronze face. "We did it, Papa," he said quietly. "We kept going, kept fighting, kept showing up." He touched the statue's hand. "Your family is everywhere now. Doctors and lawyers and teachers and marshals. Good people raising good children, passing on what you taught us." He smiled. "You'd be proud." A child tugged at his sleeve, his great-great-granddaughter, 4 years old, red hair, freckles, eyes that missed nothing. "Grandpa Joe." "Who's that man?" Joe knelt down, joints creaking. "That's your great-great-great-grandfather, Nathaniel Thornton. What did he do? He saved us." Joe's voice was thick. "He saved all of us. How? By showing up. By choosing us when nobody else would. By teaching us that family isn't about blood. It's about love." The little girl considered this. "Is that why we have so many cousins?" Joe laughed. "That's exactly why." He stood, slowly looked at the statue one more time. Then he took his great-great-granddaughter's hand and walked away. Behind him, the bronze family stood in the square, eternal and unchanging. A reminder to everyone who passed that every child deserves a chance, that every person has value. That family is about who shows up, and that sometimes when the world says nobody wants you, someone steps forward and proves the world wrong. That was Eli Thornton's gift. That was his legacy. That was the truth that 10 unwanted children carried into the world and passed down through generations until it became something unstoppable, something eternal, something that would never ever be forgotten. Because family isn't about blood, it's about choice. And Eli Thornton chose them, all of them, forever. Part 5. Louis Viet 3900-4900 to liên kết liên mật với các phần trước trong câu chuyện phá hôi thoại, tạo thành một câu chuyện liên mật khi ghép lại. Mỗi phần liên mật với phần trước không giới thiệu lại câu chuyện ở đầu phần mới. Liên kết các phần của câu chuyện một cách liền mạch. Sử dụng câu chuyện tiếp giữa các phần. Duy trì chủ đề. Tránh ngắt quãng đột ngột, không sử dụng gạch đầu dòng hoặc tiêu đề. Phụ phong cách kể chuyện Mỹ Hoa Kỳ, giống văn giàu cảm xúc chân thực và gần gũi, không mô tả cảnh, tập trung vào hành động, cảm xúc và tâm lý nhân vật. Việt phần 5, đạt điểm 10-10 và bổ sung tiết tấu câu chuyện nhanh, sửa lời ai. Kể theo ngôi thứ 3, giữ độ kịch tính, không viết lăn mạn. Kết thúc dùng câu khẳng định mạnh để khép lại câu chuyện rõ ràng, trọn vẹn. Lưu ý trả lời trong mục tin nhắn, không nhảy sang mực document mới. 2-3 phút cần có mini climax và đạt 10-15 mini climax. Mỗi phần cử 10-12 phút có một twist lớn sâu sắc đan xen, mini cliffhanger mạnh hơn. Tăng tính tự nhiên cho phản ứng của các nhân vật, thêm nhịp điệu, kịch tính thực tế và gần gũi. Mỗi 8-10 phút cần có móc giữ chân khán giả. Lưu ý không mô tả cảnh và chỉ cần viết nội dung và viết đúng lệnh nhé. Shomor Mulam Namrimot. 20 years passed like water through fingers. Maggie stood in a Denver courtroom, 41 years old, facing down a factory owner who'd been working children to death in his textile mill. The room was packed. Journalists filled the gallery. Factory workers sat in rows, some hopeful, most terrified of the powerful man their lawyer was about to destroy. She thought about her father. Eli Thornton was 72 now, white-haired, slower than he used to be. But his eyes were still winter gray, still fierce when it came to protecting people he loved. She thought about her siblings scattered across the territory and beyond. Hank ran the largest horse training operation in 3 states. The boy who'd flinched at loud noises now gentled wild stallions with nothing but patience. Joe had become a U.S. Marshal. The boy who trusted no one now carried a badge and spent his life protecting strangers. He'd married a schoolteacher named Rebecca. 4 children, all of them called Maggie Aunt. Lucy owned a bakery in Cheyenne. Her pies were legendary, her smile even more so. Patrick had taken over the ranch's carpentry, built half the furniture in the county. Rose had married a doctor and moved to California, but came home every Christmas. The younger ones had scattered too. Grace taught at a university. Samuel ran a bank. Benjamin had become a preacher, which made everyone who remembered his childhood pranks laugh until they cried. The twins, William and Sarah, were grown now. William worked the ranch alongside their father. Sarah had finished nursing school. All of them. Every single one. Living proof that broken children could become whole adults. If someone just gave them a chance. Mrs. Thornton. The judge's voice pulled her back. You may proceed with closing arguments. Maggie stood. Your Honor. Ladies and gentlemen, my opponent has spent 3 days talking about profit margins, about economic necessity, about the practical realities of running a business. She paused. But I'm not here to talk about profits. I'm here to talk about 27 children who worked 14-hour days in conditions that would shame a prison. 3 children who died because safety measures were too expensive. Every child who's ever been told they're worth less than the products they produce. Her voice hardened. My client isn't seeking damages. She's seeking recognition. Recognition that children are people, that their lives have value, that we can do better. She moved closer to the jury. I was an orphan once, auctioned off in a Wyoming winter. I know what it means to be seen as merchandise, to be poked and prodded and priced like cattle. Her voice strengthened. And I know what it means to be saved, to have someone see you as a person instead of a product, to be given a chance. She turned to face the factory owner. These children deserved that chance. They deserved to grow up, to learn, to become something. Instead, they were ground up and thrown away. Maggie returned to her place. We cannot look away, not anymore. These children cannot speak for themselves, so I speak for them, and I'm asking you to tell the world that their lives mattered. The verdict took 2 hours, guilty. Morrison got 15 years. His factory was shut down. The families received compensation that couldn't bring back their children, but might help them survive. And Maggie Walsh Thornton became the most famous lawyer in Colorado. She didn't care about fame, she cared about the children. Always the children. The telegram arrived 3 days later. Papa 6 stop, come home, stop. Joe. Maggie was on the next train. 2 days of staring out windows, 2 days of praying. Please, not yet. Joe met her at the station. He was 40 now, gray at his temples, lines around his eyes, but still watchful, still careful, still Joe. How bad. He helped her into the wagon. His heart. Could be days, could be weeks. Is he awake in and out? Keeps asking for you. The ranch looked the same. The wooden arch, the stone house, the barn stretching into the distance. But it felt different, quieter. Maddie met her at the door. At 62, she was still strong. But shadows lived under her eyes now. He's upstairs. Been waiting. Maggie climbed the stairs. Each step felt like a mile. The bedroom door was open. Eli Thornton lay in the bed where he'd slept for 50 years, where he'd held his wife and loved his children and built a life from nothing. He looked small. She'd never thought of him as small. "Hey, Papa." His eyes opened, found her face, and he smiled. "There's my girl." She crossed to the bed, took his hand, thin now, papery, but his grip was strong. "You came." "Of course I came. The trial is over. We won." "Course you did." He chuckled weakly. "You always win. Not always. Always when it matters." Tears burned behind her eyes. She hadn't cried in years. "Papa." "Shh." He squeezed her hand. "Let me say this while I can." "You don't have to." "I do." He struggled to sit up. She helped him, tried not to notice how light he was. "I've lived a good life. Better than I deserved. Because of you." "Papa." "Let me finish." His eyes were fierce. "That day at the auction, when I saw you fighting for your siblings, I thought that's the bravest person I've ever seen. I was just surviving." "No, you were saving them. There's a difference." His voice cracked. "I couldn't save William. That guilt ate at me for 25 years. Then you came along. And you saved me. I didn't." "You did. Every day. Every time you trusted me more. Every time you called me Papa. Every time you let me be part of your family." His tears fell freely now. "You gave me something to live for." Maggie couldn't speak. The tears came too fast. "I need you to promise me something. Anything. Take care of them, when I'm gone. Maddie, your brothers and sisters. Keep them together." "I will. And don't stop fighting. Don't stop fighting for the children nobody wants. I promise." "Good." He relaxed slightly. "One more thing." "What?" "Forgive yourself." "For what?" "For not trusting faster. For waiting for me to disappoint you. For holding back because you were afraid." "Papa, I know you still carry that. The part waiting for good things to end. I'm trying. I know. And I need you to know it was never your fault. None of it. Not your parents dying. Not the orphanage. Not any of it. You were a child who deserved better." His voice faded. "And I am so proud to be your father." Maggie broke. 30 years of held-back tears flooding out. She buried her face in his chest and sobbed. Eli held her. His arms were weak. His love was strong. "It's okay. I've got you. Always." They stayed that way until he slept. The others arrived over the next 3 days. Hank rode hard from Montana, walked in and dropped to his knees. "I came fast as I could." "I know." Eli touched his face. "Look at you. Still got hay in your hair. Some things don't change." "Good. Don't change." Lucy arrived with her husband and children. Baked 7 pies because she didn't know what else to do. Patrick came. Rose came. The younger ones came. Joe's children came. 4 little ones who barely knew their grandfather but sensed this was important. The house filled with people. And Eli smiled. "Look at them." He told Maggie. "Look at what we built. You built this. We built it together." His last day came on a Sunday. The whole family gathered. Maddie on one side, Maggie on the other. The rest crowded close. Eli drifted, sometimes recognizing faces, sometimes talking to people who weren't there. "William," he said once. "Is that you?" The siblings exchanged looks. "You look good. I'm sorry I couldn't save you." Silence. "But I saved them." His voice was faint. "All 10 of them. I saved them, William. You did, Papa." Maggie squeezed his hand. "You saved us." He turned his head, found her face. "My girl, I'm here. You're going to change the world. I'm going to try." "Not try. Will. Because you're a Thornton. And Thorntons don't quit." His breathing slowed. "Maddie, I'm here, my love. Thank you. For the second chance. You always deserved it. He closed his eyes. Tell them I love them. We will. And tell them, family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up. His hand went limp. Maddie began to cry. The others followed. They buried him on the hill overlooking the ranch. The whole territory came. Ranchers, townspeople, former orphans he'd helped place, rich and poor, all gathered to say goodbye. Maggie stood at the grave. My father was not a perfect man, stubborn, demanding, temper that could peel paint, soft laughter. But he was the most loving person I've known. He took in 10 orphans when everyone said he was crazy. He fought for us when no one thought we were worth it. She looked at her siblings. He chose us, every day, even when we made it hard. Her voice strengthened. His legacy isn't this ranch. It isn't the money or land. His legacy is us. Every child we've saved because he showed us how. Every family we've built because he taught us what family means. She touched the headstone. Rest now, Papa. We've got it from here. Joe appeared beside her after the crowd dispersed. Remember when you found me in that cabin? Maggie nodded. I told you nobody helps anybody. That caring was weakness. You were wrong. I was terrified. Of wanting something I couldn't have. Joe's voice was quiet. Of believing and being disappointed. What changed? You came for me. Nobody ever came for me before. Then Papa did. And I realized maybe I was allowed to have good things. Maggie took his hand. We all realized that. Eventually. Because of him. Because of him. 2 years later, Maggie stood in the United States Supreme Court. The case of her life. Children's labor rights. National legislation. A chance to change everything. The justices deliberated. Her siblings had come. All of them. Joe and Hank and Lucy and the rest. Maddie, the twins. More family than she could count. The doors opened. All rise. In the matter of Thornton versus United States, the Chief Justice announced this court finds in favor of the plaintiff. The gallery erupted. Maggie couldn't hear over the roaring in her ears. She'd won. Furthermore, Congress should implement immediate legislation protecting working children across all states. No child should be treated as property. Arms around her, her siblings. You did it, Joe said. We did it. Together. That night, 3 generations gathered at Joe's house. Lucy taught her grandchildren pie crust. Hank told horse stories. The Murphy twins argued politics. Joe found Maggie in the doorway. Remember what you told me when I was 14 and hiding in that cabin that we'd survive? That family means showing up. Joe nodded. I didn't believe you then. And now I've got 4 children and 11 grandchildren who call me Grandpa. Joe's voice cracked. Because you came for me. Because Papa didn't give up. He never gave up on any of us. I know. Joe was quiet. Sometimes I still can't believe it's real. Maggie took his hand. It's real, Joe. All of it. The family, the legacy, everything he built. Everything we built. She smiled. Everything we built. 50 years later, they put up a statue. In the town square where it all began. Bronze. A man with his hand extended. 10 children around him. The oldest girl reaching up. The plaque read, In memory of Nathaniel Thornton, who taught a generation that family is about who shows up. Maggie had passed peacefully 3 years before, surrounded by children and grandchildren who knew her story by heart. But Joe was there. 90 years old, white-haired, still watching exits from habit. He stood before the statue and looked up at his father's bronze face. We did it, Papa. Kept going. Kept fighting. Kept showing up. He touched the statue's hand. Your family is everywhere now. Doctors, lawyers, teachers, good people raising good children. He smiled. You'd be proud. A child tugged his sleeve. His great-great-granddaughter. 4 years old. Red hair, eyes that missed nothing. Grandpa Joe. Who's that man? Joe knelt down slowly. That's your great-great-great-grandfather, Nathaniel Thornton. What did he do? He saved us. All of us. How? By showing up. By choosing us when nobody else would. By teaching us that family isn't about blood. The little girl considered this. Is that why we have so many cousins? Joe laughed. That's exactly why. He stood, looked at the statue one more time. Then he took his great-great-granddaughter's hand and walked away. Behind them, the bronze family stood eternal. A reminder to everyone who passed. That every child deserves a chance. That every person has value. That sometimes when the world says nobody wants you, someone steps forward and proves the world wrong. That was Eli Thornton's gift. That was his truth. Family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up. And Eli Thornton showed up. For 10 unwanted children. For a broken world that needed hope. For every generation that came after. He showed up. And because he did nothing was ever the same again.